We all want to live happy, joyous lives, right? But for true happiness, we must seek the source of joy. I'm Brian Patrick as we continue our Keys for Life series, Life of Happiness, this time on Crossing the Goal. We are kicking off the next in our series on Keys for Life, Life of Happiness. Here's the Crossing the Goal team. The Vice President of Renewal Ministries, Peter Herbeck, the founder and president of the Fellowship of Catholic University Students, or FOCUS, Curtis Martin, and our coach on Crossing the Goal, a former NFL coach and all-pro wide receiver, Danny Abramowitz. Happiness. We have the right to seek happiness as Americans, but you wonder, does God want us to be happy?
It's a good question. Does God want us to be happy? He does. In fact, the reason we're so focused on happiness is He's made us for happiness. Happiness, I think Thomas Aquinas might even have said at one point, happiness is our ultimate end, the end that we're living for, what God wants to bring us to. I mean, happiness ultimately is seeing God's face. That's what he means by it. It's the ultimate end. But there's so many different definitions of what constitutes happiness in our culture today. We want to talk today about what the real road and the true definition of happiness is all about.
And expose a fundamental lie about happiness. The culture is telling us a lie that flows right out of hell, really, which says that fun leads to happiness. And we see that people pursue fun in order to achieve happiness throughout our culture all the time at great, great expense. But that's actually a lie from hell. The truth is that goodness leads to happiness. And we need to pursue goodness if we want to be seriously happy. And in order to be good, we need to be united with God in Christ.
Yeah, and like you guys said, all of us are searching for true happiness out here in this life. And on this show, I think what we're going to dig into, like you had mentioned, what is happiness? Where can we find true happiness? Mm-hmm. Where are we searching for this happiness? And then what are the fruits of happiness? And can we totally be happy here on this earth?
Okay, so to really seek that life of goodness that eventually leads to happiness, you've got to have a game plan. Peter and Curtis have it for us next here on Crossing the Goal.
I'm Curtis Martin, and I'm here with Peter Herbeck, and our topic is happiness. It's an amazing thing, Peter. We live in a culture where it's never been easier to pursue happiness. We have wealth, we have leisure, we have all
freedom.
Sorts of things to give us, to give us that. And yet listen to what Peter Kreeft has to say, a great philosopher, Catholic philosopher. He says this: the richer you are, the richer your family, the richer your country, the more likely it is that you will find life so good that you will choose to blow your brains out. In other words, in the midst of all that pursuit, there's deep despair. Yeah. If we are spending so much time and so much energy pursuing happiness, why aren't we doing a better job of achieving it?
Yeah, because we're looking in all the wrong places for it. In a certain way, we're trying to invest. Like, money's not a bad thing, right? You got to be careful with money. Being rich there's not a problem with being rich, but it's difficult for a rich man to get into the kingdom of heaven. It's difficult for a rich man to ultimately be happy in the sense that we're talking about happiness, the kind of happiness that the Lord is has delivered to us. But even the wise pagans understood what happiness was. Like the Greeks, Plato and Aristotle used the term eudaimonia. You break that up. Eu means good. So to your reference, that somehow eudaimonia, this term that refers to happiness, that goodness is a part of the definition. Daimon means spirit or soul. So it's something that's good for my soul and good for my spirit, that it's not necessarily material like wealth and big buildings and homes and all the rest of it. That can't satisfy my soul. And E at the end means permanent. So permanent happiness is tied to the goodness of my soul. That is the pursuit of that for which I have been made, the good that God made me for. And ultimately, the ultimate good is God himself. I remember Father Spitzer, he has like 4 types of happiness. And the first one is happiness that we have from possessing things. A little bit like Dr. Kreeft was talking about. So if I possess this, this much money, or I have this kind of property, or I own this or that, I have a big plane.
Get a brand new car.
It's going
Feel
to make
great
me,
about yourself.
Yeah, it's going to make me happy.
Yep.
But it can't make me happy because when it's less than myself, because the car can't feed the soul need that I have. It doesn't touch that goodness side of me, Plus, eventually it all becomes old in a hurry, and I got to have something more, and I got to have something more. That's why it doesn't satisfy. So secondly, there's also the happiness of, he says, comparative advantage. I look at you and I say, gee, Curtis has a smaller house than I do. Curtis's career maybe isn't as big as my career, so I feel happy about myself because I've advanced. That's not true in your case.
I was going to say, live in the
you
truth,
have a much
brother.
bigger
Live
house.
in the
I know. Yeah, but at the end of the day, what that means is that it can't lead me to happiness because we're talking being competitive. And then plus I can always find somebody who's got a whole lot more than me.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of a loser way to approach it. You're never going to be able to sustain happiness in that way. And the third way is blessedness. We're getting close to the perfection of it, but blessedness is I want to live for the good of another. I want to, my concern is to help you lay hold of the good for which you have been made.
The problem for me, Peter, is that blessedness, according to what our Lord is saying, is so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
I mean, when he says, blessed are, and to me, Matthew has a list of the Beatitudes and Luke, and they're very, very similar. Jesus probably gave this same sermon many, many times throughout the 3 years of his public ministry. But I find Luke's a little bit more challenging. Matthew says, blessed are the poor in spirit.
Yeah.
But Luke just says that Jesus said, blessed are the poor.
Yeah.
And I actually just don't believe that. I want to believe that.
Yeah.
I love the Lord and I want to follow him, but if I, it's payday and all of a sudden I look at my paycheck's half what it was supposed to be, I'm not going, that is so cool.
Yeah.
That's just not where I live. I'm not ready to embrace poverty
Right.
that way. I have a few great Franciscan friends. I say, you got to love these readings. But the Beatitudes are so tough because when Jesus said it's blessed, I would never have guessed if he hadn't come and revealed them. And we've got to see that again here, as is true with love. If you want to find happiness, if you want to live in love, you've got to live in the truth.
Yeah.
And Jesus comes to reveal the truth about life to us so that we can pursue love and happiness.
Yeah, the things that we were made for. This is the key and the difference. Like, I think one of the most popular ways of understanding happiness in our culture is that it's like subjective contentment. I'm happy if I feel happy, or if I'm doing something. And then we're convinced that that pleasures, the feeling of pleasure, is what happiness is. So I pursue pleasures, and if I want to be really happy, I max out on pleasure. I just keep pursuing them, and I run after them. They're going to make me happy. They're going to make me happy. But at the end of the day, they don't, because they don't touch the core of what I am as a person, what I was made for, how I'm designed. And how I'm designed is to love God, to love the good, to love my neighbor, and these kinds of things. But we don't believe it. We don't want to take the risk.
And it's counterintuitive again because in order to love you or to love anybody, there's an element of sacrifice. I have to get outside of myself. And so the very first step towards happiness isn't necessarily pleasurable.
Yeah.
And whereas the very first step of pleasure, why would that not lead to happiness? And yet over and over again, like a kitten who keeps reaching out for a string and it can't help itself almost, we find ourselves going after things that are going to offer momentary pleasure. And it's like drinking salt water. You're thirsty, so you take a sip, and then all of a sudden you realize you have a problem. I'm thirstier than I was before I took the sip.
Yeah.
And you're in this vicious cycle, particularly here in the first world, where we have almost unlimited opportunity to pursue happiness.
Yeah.
And instead of pursuing goodness to get there, we find ourselves frustrated because God has made us for himself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in him.
That's right, absolutely. And there's Jesus essentially saying, stop worrying about it and stop pursuing it. Lose yourself, deny yourself, lay down your life, follow me, and I promise I will lead you to ultimate happiness. I'll lead you to total satisfaction for your life if you follow me.
I'm the only one who's been on both sides.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's better in the world to come.
Yeah.
Brian?
All right, Curtis, Peter, thanks. Coach, based on that game plan, it's clear we're not talking about happiness, right?
No, I think that, like, you're laughing and smiling and have a little bit of fun. We need to start with not taking ourselves so serious.
Well, I'm glad you don't, because none of us take you very seriously.
No, I know that.
But we'll try in the red zone next.
All right.
in the red zone on Crossing the Goal talking about a life of happiness as we continue our Keys for Life series. Coach, you had just about everything most guys would be really happy with.
You know, I really look back and think of, what was I looking for to make me happy? And then if I found these things, would I really be truly happy? And I started thinking about what was I after really? Accomplishments, success, financial security, awards, pleasure, popularity, all these things. And they said, was you really happy? I was temporarily happy. It's not like I wasn't happy.
You were enjoying it.
Enjoying it, but then at phase, and then that's not enough. What's next? What's next? What's next? And then finally, I woke up one day and I said, wait a minute, I am really not very well at peace with myself. I don't like the journey that I'm on. I really am not happy, and I'm very blessed. Why am I not feeling this way? Why am I feeling so terrible about this? I should feel better. And of course, we can get into later. Then I turned to the Lord. And all those other things. We want to make sure on the show, having cars, houses, this, that.
Yeah,
we're not saying that's
enjoy
a
that.
bad
or to
thing
be successful. Being successful is great. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's,
we
you
wanna
should
be
use your talents and gifts
exactly.
to achieve something. So we're not trying to get down on that. We're
It just
trying to-
can be distracting from your ultimate goal. And if
Right.
it is a distraction, then it becomes a bad thing, even though in and of itself it's not a bad thing.
Exactly.
And the flip side is if you are happy in the Lord, you probably will be successful. That's been my excuse.
And I think what we don't
Experience.
see how we get fooled is that the pleasure that's offered us, all the pleasures that are there, the fast lane, money, sex, power, gold, whatever, it gets offered to us, and it does produce something in us. We get a charge from it, and you feel good. You feel like, but pleasure really is a byproduct. If you it's a secondary thing. If you pursue it for its own sake, it will evaporate because it'll leave you empty. And I mean, I think that's the story all the way across our culture. Why are there so many people so unhappy? We've got, like Curtis said, every opportunity. No one's ever had as much in the history of the world has ever had the opportunities we have to make ourselves happy. We pursue all these things, but somehow we're taking more pills and we're going to more doctors than any.
I think one of the big problems in that answer to your question there is we are doing these other things is fine. But where's God? We're taking God out of the equation. He has to be in the equation, then those other things make sense. If he's not in that equation, it won't make sense. We're am I really happy? Am I really this or am I really that? But they'll say, I'm not. Why do I feel this way? Is because we talked about the truth. The truth is you have to have the Lord in your life. He has to be the number one priority. Guys, if he's not, you can be searching all over the place and you're going to find gold medals. I don't care what it is. The head of a corporation, I don't care what it is. You'll never, ever be happy until you at least have the Lord in your life, number one priority, then the rest will fall into place.
He tells us, first of all, that we need to make a gift of ourselves, that we have to lay our lives down. Then he lays his life down for us to get, and then he gives us his spirit so that we have the power to do it. I was sitting in a car. I was going to go pick up one of my kids from the movies. And my wife and I said, well, we'll go there. So we drive up, and we're in the parking lot, and we can see our kid right out there. The movie's over, and we're sitting there, and our kid sees us, and we're talking, and I'm starting to get distracted. I'm like, what are they doing? I mean, it's time to go. Let's go. It goes on for 5 minutes, and I'm starting to get really frustrated. and then at 10 minutes, and now I'm getting angry, and it hit me. My wife is completely at peace. And I'm completely missing it. My wife had learned how to make a gift of herself because she's been serving our children for 20 years. And she was enjoying the fact that she was in a car without any distractions with her husband. And I was missing that great opportunity because I allowed the frustration because I was living for myself. And I realized, I looked over and I said, you died to yourself a long time ago, didn't you? And she said, yeah, I did. And I saw her experiencing happiness, and I didn't have it because I wasn't where Christ wanted me to be.
That's a good point. I mean, it's a good way to say it is that if you want to be happy, be more focused on the happiness of others than you are on yourself. The love and service of your neighbor and love and service of God, and that's the key. I mean, just stop trying to make yourself happy and just do what the Master said and follow him.
Not only that, don't you think, Peter, that sometimes we beat ourselves up. We take ourselves, I mentioned it coming down jokingly, but I was serious, that we take ourselves too serious sometimes, that we have to chill out, to relax and really find out the blessings that we have. Like you said, we have tremendous blessings here. And then when we give of ourselves, see, your wife learned that, my wife does it, I know you guys too, is that we feel so much better. When you give rather than receive, don't you feel, I mean, I know when I do.
At least after the fact. To me, the question always is, how do I feel about the way I lived yesterday, today, when I look back on it? Because I can be in the midst of it and pursuing the pleasure, and pleasure does give you momentary happiness. But in the next day, I sit back and go, dang it, I could have done better. Whereas if you live for others all day, and you wake up the next morning, you're like, that was great.
Yeah.
Right.
That was a well-lived day.
You know, another thing is we got to be careful of too is us as men, as husbands or fathers or whatever, grandfathers, that what do we project to the ones around us? Are we happy? You know, we want them to follow the Christian faith, but we're walking around with a frown on our face, or we're mean, or we're this, or we're that. Why would our son, why would our daughter, why would our grandson, why would anyone want to follow us if we project unhappiness?
That's right. Yeah, they need to see our joy. And I think part of what gets confused here is that happiness is thought of as everything's going right. Everything's going great, so I can be happy. But I can have joy in the midst of sorrow, in the midst of pain. That's happiness in a sense. But it comes from the source, and that's from God. So I can be at peace and have joy. And as you said, our children, and especially our grandchildren, should be able to see that in the way we live.
You know, you and I can relate to this. I can remember my dad was going through the suffering towards the end, ready to pass away, and same with your
my
mother.
mom at the same time.
I didn't see it at the time. I said, wonder why the Lord's keeping this man alive like this. But I saw my dad in a joy state, that he was at peace, that he was happy, that made it was a blessing to my wife and I. So the Lord was keeping him alive for us and our kids, that we were able to bring our kids, our grandkids, his great grandkids, in to see him.
Yes.
And you know, it gave him the peace and happiness, and then it really fed all of us.
And now you have that happy memory.
Yes.
And you get out of that cycle, you get caught in the cycle. The culture is built on helping us be discontented. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You got to have more. Why don't you have more? Your neighbor has more. He's better, he's smarter, he's bigger, he's faster, he's got more money. What's your deal? You know, and so we live with an anxiety in our mind, like, I want to be, why aren't I happier? I should be happier. And we're always trying to deal with that internal pain. And so a lot of guys can't handle it. So what do? They turn to alcohol, they turn to pornography, they turn to this, that, other thing to numb that pain or to numb that anxiety and stuff inside. And Jesus is just saying, look, I'm here. All is well. It's going to be okay. So even suffering, it's painful, but don't sweat it. Think of Jesus. Who's the happiest person who ever walked the face of the earth? Jesus Christ. Who's the most fulfilled together person ever? Jesus. And he's dying on the cross. You think he was hanging from the cross saying, hey, Dad, this isn't working.
Right.
I don't feel good about this right now. You know, I mean, that's not where he was coming from. He was saying, Father, I mean, at the end of the day, what he did is he accepted the fact that the Father was his portion, and any suffering would be temporary because he had his treasure already, and he knew no one could take it away. He was going to have it with him forever. And that's the same thing you've got. That's what he came to give us. That's why we can endure that stuff, and we can say no, you know, to ourselves.
And you need to know this before you suffer, because you can't be taught in the middle of suffering. You need to know ahead. I mean, you can go back now and make a strong case that Jesus was meditating on the Psalms while he was dying on the cross. All of his quotes are from the Psalms, and they're in order. And so you sit back and say, oh, this is amazing. He's turned to his Father when he doesn't feel great about what's going on, because he has deep confidence in him, and he wants us to have that same type of confidence.
So why don't we turn to the Psalms?
Why don't we turn to the Lord?
Psalm 37.
Yeah, let's just sort of chill out back there and close your eyes and listen to the Lord speak. This is Psalm 37. Trust in the Lord and do good, so you will dwell in the land and be nourished in safety. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act. And here's the finishing touch, which is the most difficult. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him.
I love the word delight in there. Delight.
Yes. Trust,
That's happiness.
delight, commit.
That's beautiful. And the last word on this life of happiness from the end zone, along with our email bag, next here on Crossing the Goal. We have crossed the goal into the end zone. We're talking about a life of happiness on our series, Keys for Life. We'll get the last word from our team members on a life of happiness after we go to the email bag. First email is from Bruce. He says, could you keep my mom and older children in your prayers? Our children need to come back to the church. Our mom has suffering with illness, and she would like God to stop it or end it for her. Coach, the only thing I can think of is, as I remember my mom going through her last days, is that, as you mentioned with your dad, you just never know what God's doing in that situation. Just trust that God's in it.
Yeah, I think so, that there's a blessing. You know, the Lord's going to take them when He wants them. And we've got to take and enjoy them while they're here and be at peace at ourselves, and they'll be at peace that there's no thing going on that I'm sorry I did this or this went on in my life. Just be happy and with the present moment, what's happening in their life.
And you know you have older children too, so do I, and we want them actively involved in the church. I think the best way is to be an example and take them to Mass with us when we can.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, here's a nice letter from, it's just a line from a guy named David. He said, I'm a boy dreaming of becoming a soccer star. He said, I want to play for the United States national team. How can I keep my dream alive? Any thoughts?
I think the biggest thing is, you know, you got to dream. You got to dream big. You know, just hope, practice. And I never dreamed in a million years that I would ever play in the NFL, but I did. So you just keep.
And just keep putting first things first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just keep loving the Lord, keep growing in the Lord at the same time as you're dedicating yourself, be the best you can be, try to find the best coaching and be with the best kind of guys that are going to help you reach your goal. Give it all you have, but just place it in God's hands.
Yeah, when we were little kids, David, I don't think any of us dreamed of being on the Crossing the Goal team.
Yeah.
And here we are.
At the top of the mountain.
That's right. So this life of happiness, here's the last word now. Peter starts us off.
You know, Jesus' definition of happiness really does produce what he promises. I was just thinking of the first letter from St. Peter. He's writing to young converts who are living in a very difficult situation. He says, I know you're experiencing lots of suffering and many trials in your life. So here he's writing to these people, but he describes what their life is like because of their relationship with Jesus. They have found the pearl of great price, the source of their joy. He says, without having seen him, you love him. And though you do not now see him, and believe in him, and you rejoice with unutterable and exalted joy. These are people who were being martyred. These were people who were being persecuted. Their lives are filled with unutterable and exalted joy because they had the pearl of great price they knew no one could take from them.
They were living what I like to call the Catholic home game. I mean, this really is the issue. This speaks to the heart of every man, woman, and child. You don't have to argue with somebody about whether they'd like to be happy or not. Everyone wants to be happy. Right. The Catholic Church is saying we have spoken to the King of Kings, the Lord of the universe, and he has shown us the way. He's taught us how to do this. So draw close to Christ, allow our thinking to be transformed. St. Catherine of Siena said this about you and about me. If you are what you're meant to be, you'll set the world on fire. Jesus Christ is the key to you and I becoming who we're meant to be.
Amen. There's a famous book out there called Abandonment to Divine Providence by de Caussade. And what it really basically breaks it down, life is that the present moment, to live in the present moment, to be happy in trials, tribulations, sufferings, whatever it is, that's God's plan for you at that particular time. So enjoy it.
Well, I'm enjoying and very happy to be with you guys on Crossing the Goal. Thank you, Coach.
Ditto.
Curtis and Peter. I'm Brian Patrick. Thanks for joining us. And next time we'll look at life with others as we continue our Keys for Life series here on Crossing the Goal.